Good morning, everyone. This is Lindsay with LiveVox. Thank you for joining today's webinar, Strengthen Compliance and Optimize the Customer Experience with Speech Analytics. It is about 2 minutes until the top of the hour. It looks like we still have some folks hopping on, so we're going to give it another minute or two, but appreciate you guys for hopping on early. We'll get started in a minute. Good morning, everyone. This is Lindsay with LiveVox. Thank you again for joining today's webinar, Strengthen Compliance and Optimize the Customer Experience with Speech Analytics. It is 9 a.m. Pacific time. It looks like we have a couple more folks dialing in. We're going to give it 60 more seconds, but in the meantime, we're going to go ahead and do a quick sound check with today's speakers. Jason Queener, are you out there?
Hey, good afternoon, Lindsay.
Good afternoon. And Nick Morris.
Good morning, Lindsay. Nick's on.
Good morning. All right. We're going to give it 30 more seconds and then we'll kick it off. Thank you all again for joining. All right, it is 9:01 Pacific time, so to be respectful of everyone's time, we're going to go ahead and kick it off. A couple of quick housekeeping notes. This webinar is being recorded and will be distributed to everyone on the line today. And also there is a question box in the side of the GoToWebinar panel. So if you have questions for our panelists, please feel free to enter them and we will get to them at the end. With that, I will kick it off to Jason Queener to begin. Jason.
Hey, thanks, Lindsay. Hey, good afternoon. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. We have this slotted for an hour. I fully expect to get everybody back to their day within 30 minutes. So with that said, I am joined today by Nick Morris. He's our Senior Director of Workforce Optimization. And for those of you that don't know me, my name is Jason Queener. I lead our business consulting team here at LiveVox. So let's go ahead and hop into the content again. To Lindsay's point, if you have a question, go ahead and throw it into the questions, comments part of the GoToWebinar control panel, and I'll get to those at the end there as quickly as we can. This slide probably looks familiar to most of you if you've joined our webinars before. This is actually the final of our weekly installments of our webinars. So I appreciate you guys joining. Today we're really going to talk about, again, operating a remote agent workforce continues to be a necessity. I think everyone's eager to get back into their office, and I say this every week, I think at this point it's become pretty clear that work at home is proving a sustainable solution for most, if not all, organizations. So with that in mind, you still need to mitigate risk and deliver outcomes to meet your customer expectations. Customer means just that. It could be your actual customers or your clients that you serve and do business for. With a remote agent, it's difficult to hear and see them, right? It's not as simple as standing up and looking at them from 2 feet away. So you need to understand that call sentiment in different ways. Manual processes around quality and compliance are becoming even more challenging. Again, not as simple as asking the rep to come sit in your office and have a conversation about the calls they just had. Access to key business insights is more important than ever, especially in the circumstances we're in the way they're evolving and changing so rapidly. And as always, we're here to help with any way that we can with our tools and our teams. So let's hop into today's content. We've touched on kind of quality management as a whole, but today we're really going to focus specifically on speech analytics. So speech analytics 101. So first and foremost, you're automatically monitoring 100% of the phone calls using advanced AI. Those conversations are transcribed in full, cataloged, meaningful text that's searchable, reviewable, right? And once you have that text catalog, you can use keywords, phrases, and sentiment to analyze that information. Data can be used for all sorts of purposes, right? Triggering notifications, populating scorecards, feeding performance reports. What we're really going to talk about today is treating the content of your customer engagements just like you would any other KPIs, just like you would abandon rate or average handle time or right party contact rate or conversion rate. We're going to encourage you to use the content of your speech analytics to make strategic decisions in the same way. So with that, I'm going to pass this over to Nick Morris. Nick's going to drive through kind of the content and some really strong concepts about speech IQ and speech analytics. Nick?
Yeah, thanks, Jason. That's a great overview, and I think the benefits for contact centers, pretty obvious. We've been talking about them for a few years, so we're going to present our solution, kind of how they address these. I think you're going to find some really good takeaways in that. Obviously, we want to transform our risk mitigation capabilities. We want to really get deeper and wider in how we view all those customer interactions. We obviously want to improve our quality management process. We talked a lot on the last webinar about our QM process, and automation through speech analytics is one component of it. So we're not asking you to abandon or recommending you abandon those manual processes, those traditional processes that yield very high coaching and training results. We're asking you to look at automation as a way to broaden that view of your contact center. And then obviously we want to get tactical with the monitoring, managing, and coaching of agents. And then Jason, at the end, we'll talk through how those business insights from speech analytics can be used not only inside the contact center, but everywhere.
Excellent,
so let's
great.
Get started with risk. Let's get started with risk mitigation. Go ahead, Jason.
No, I was going to say, I just appreciate the recap.
Yeah. So risk mitigation is a great place to start because the phrases are pretty well defined for the most part. So speech analytics can be applied here very easily. So we're asking call center leaders to make sure all their agents are following these rules, making sure the mini Miranda is appropriately deployed while avoiding certain words and phrases that may escalate situations and open your company up to litigation. So some key takeaways here is on day one. So we have built into the product already these keywords, these statements. We've trained the engine to be able to recognize these out of the gate. So you're not looking to derail your quality management staff and turn them into analysts to try to train a speech engine. These are things you can deploy very quickly inside your contact center to get insight. So mini Mirandas are fairly standard, not a lot of tuning required. So when you start feeding your customer interactions through speech IQ, there's an easy hit there. Recording disclaimer, different somewhat from organization to organization, but again, it's easy to tune and we'll help you through that. You're not bringing in a speech scientist. You're not going deep into the technology. You're just tuning it for your particular contact center needs, and obviously any federal requirements for credit discussions can be added as well. Script adherence is an interesting one. LiveVox actually has a product called Scripter, which guides agents through phone calls, kind of a workflow tool to help them with those customer interactions. And if you combine that with speech analytics, you can get really deep insights into script adherence where you may need to even modify your script. So those two tools work together to create a very nice solution. PCI, major concern for all contact centers, and this is an out-of-the-box capability. So not only can you record or locate in the recordings where there may be PCI information, but you can redact that as well. So when we talk about identification of PCI information, that may be an indication that a workflow's gone wrong. You might have agents that are misusing some of their technologies and are allowing that credit card information to be recorded. You may have had a technology failure where we're not pausing and resuming the calls correctly and that PCI information isn't there. So we want to detect that and redact it out of the calls. So a note on that PCI in particular, this isn't just simply an indication or technology that's going to match 16-digit codes and redact them. There is more intelligence in the redaction engine here to look at the phrasing around it. So is it really a credit card number, or is it an account number? Is it an IP address? So it's not just a blanket see numbers, remove numbers technology. It's smarter than that. And then branding, right? We want to make sure our agents are on brand with their greetings, with their closings, their attitudes. We want to make sure they're representing the company in the proper light.
You know, Nick, you mentioned script adherence here, and one of the things that I was thinking through was it's a really good opportunity to understand the effectiveness of particularly like a champion and challenger. Obviously, their results driven by sale or revenue or purchases, whatever, right? But it's really easy to use this same concept to say, all right, I'm going to use keywords and phrases to ensure that my agents are pitching promotions and incentives and challenger sort of strategies in the right way, right? So it's just kind of thinking out of the box. There's a lot of ways to really tackle your agents saying and doing the right things on every call.
Yeah, absolutely. Great point. So the flip side of this is true as well, right? We want to measure and monitor if agents are performing what we want them to do. Obviously, we can do the same thing, use the technology to detect when they're not doing what we want them to do. And obviously, this is less scripted than than more of a mini Miranda or call recording disclosure. But again, we have libraries of information in the speech product that can get you out of the gate immediately doing this. So combative responsiveness, handling, those are automatically can be identified and bubbled to the top. When you look at the inappropriate language, and I'll touch on this more when we get to sentiment, but it's very important to have call recordings, customer interactions that are multi-channel and identified clearly which is the agent and which is the customer. So that's going to tell us, obviously, inappropriate language is bad on any call, no matter who's saying it, but you've got a different story to tell when it's a customer versus an agent. And you don't want to be chasing your tail with false positives because you picked up any of these things you're seeing on your screen, and it turns out the customer said it and not the agent. So the better artifact we can get of that conversation into this system, the more effective it's going to be. And, I don't know, Jason, do you have any kind of maybe real life practical examples of how this has been deployed in a contact center around maybe malpractice?
For sure. One of the things that we see this used for very often, Nick, and it's something that's very difficult to catch with a QM team, is what we call an agent hiding a call. So a perfect example of this, and I think I may even share this on a previous webinar. Some of our customers, work at home agents, were not allowed to take payments over the phone. We're not allowed to collect credit card information from their homes. What they found was by using Speech IQ, they could find those calls where an agent was taking a credit card payment, even though they may have been coding it as wrong number or left message third party. Things that a QM agent or a QM manager is not going to go search, right? As a quality person, I'm not going to go search for left message third party phone calls. So I would never catch those. So using this automated scorecard allows you to go catch those calls that an agent could be potentially hiding. Doesn't happen often, but it's pretty risky, right? So yeah, that's I think a pretty powerful example.
Yeah, it's a great example. Thank you. Let's take a look at the interface. You want to flip to the next slide for me? So again, a lot of these products that are out there today require a lot of effort on the contact center's part to not only learn your contact center, be trained in how to deal with your languages, and the interfaces are fairly complicated as well. And you're going to see here through the next few slides, we're using a lot of push technology to make sure your agents and your quality managers are receiving information. Very simple, clean interface, as you can see here. But you can also just, give this interface out to maybe a marketing executive or a sales executive and let them add filters and do some searching, look through some word clouds, find some interesting scenarios. Maybe you have a new promotion and we don't have a full structure built out of how we want to process that. Your marketing team can come in here and look at these words. So very simple to use, does not require heavy lift. And Jason, we're using this internally as well. And do you have any examples of us using that internally?
Yeah, our customer care team uses this every day. So there's a couple things that I think are extremely helpful about this when I leverage it, even on our internal teams. Is first and foremost, it allows me to trigger, to your point, on key phrases, right? You want to hear if a customer's calling in and escalating out of frustration, right? I want to know that. I want to be able to grab that information and get it to the account team as quickly as I can for them to review that and make sure that relationship's not in danger, or we have a frustrated customer we need to resolve. One of the other things that's very, very helpful is, our customer care team is a great example of this. The call durations are very long, right? And we're all very busy. But if I can go in and say, hey, I'd like to hear some of our calls that were about, I don't know, maybe they're complaining about latency, and I want to see how that person troubleshooted that to make sure that we have the right processes in place. I can go to that exact portion of the call. If you see over there on the right, I can just click on that keyword, jump right to the portion of the call I want to listen to, and listen to that little snippet rather than trying to process a 20, 30-minute long phone call. So that's an example of what we do today. And I think that's really the value for anybody, right? Being able to take a large segment of data and chunk it down and precisely listen to specific little portions. It's just such a time saver.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. Next slide, let's talk a little bit about sentiment here. So a very important component of the speech product is sentiment, and that's the component that measures customers' opinions or attitudes. And as you can see on the screen, also measures agents as well. So I mentioned earlier, it's important to have speaker separated audio. We do that with the integration with LiveVox. We need to know which channel is the customer and which channel is the agent, so we can do this appropriately. But with that identification, sentiment becomes very powerful. We can find and sort and notify on poor customer experiences or on agent performance, and this information can be rolled up and presented to an agent. And as you see, as we kind of walk through some of these quality management workflows, sentiment can be something that we make decisions on, right? We want to listen to calls that have specific sentiments. And with work at home, this becomes even more important. Agents are dealing with new contact center technologies and workflows and a new physical work environment. So monitoring sentiment is a great way to understand the agent performance at a glance with a real clean interface there.
Hey, Nick, that's something that I don't think we think enough about with work at home agents. It's pretty easy if I'm in a contact center to look, and I'll just use this example. It's pretty easy for me to walk down the aisle and see that Dan Beasley's having a bad day, right? Not so easy when the rep's 40 miles away and I can't see their face and hear them talking on every call. So this is just super powerful stuff.
Right. Yeah. Great way to uncover issues. So so I mentioned notifications previously. Again, easy use is primary component of this solution. We don't want your quality managers sitting in an interface trying to spelunk through a bunch of data to find information. We want that push to them as much as possible. So setting up custom notifications, pushing them out when there's something that they need to be aware of. So specific keywords, phrases, sentiment scores, or lack of particular keywords or phrases, notify of them proactively. So don't expect them to go in at the end of the day and look at a report and then work backwards. Alert them throughout the day as to what's going on within the contact center. And that not only works with the data that we're deriving via transcription, but that works with call metadata. And with the integration with LiveVox's voice platform, we get a rich set of agent metadata that you can, sort on as well. So you can combine information that particular campaigns that may be new, we may be extra sensitive to those and require more notifications around those. So it's a great way to kind of keep people focused on what they want to be, should be focused on, but also push that information out to them in real time.
Hey, Nick, so Question for you about the alerts, because and I think we're all guilty of this. We often we have folks say, "Hey, I'd like alerts when my campaign's in, or this happens, or this happens," and we alert ourselves to the point that we start to ignore them all. So, what do you kind of see as kind of the best practice there to not just alert for the sake of alerting?
Yeah, you definitely want to be pointed and only raise really red flags, right? You don't need to be notified whenever a minor thing happens. There are thresholds you can set as well, so you can make sure you're just getting notified when there's real problems in the contact center. But you're right, you're going to get that fatigue if you just say, "Hey, give me an alert whenever this is hit." You're just going to get fatigue and you're going to squelch it, and then you're going to miss the real notifications that have a lot of value.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thanks.
So let's jump over to quality management. Obviously, this is a huge component of quality management, and being able to score 100% of our calls gives us just a huge insight into the contact center. But I'm going to talk kind of through how this is a component of the quality management process. And again, we like to look at this as a funnel, right? We're going to bring in hundreds of thousands of calls into our contact center, and we're going to expect everybody to know everything about those calls. So we want to use this as a way to funnel all those calls down to really study those interactions that matter. So where do we really want to focus our quality managers' time? We don't want them in a speech tool searching for calls to listen to. We don't want them in a traditional QM platform searching for calls to review. We want to take data points that we derive from automation, right? You see some on the screen there: sentiment, keywords, percent silence, talk over percentage. We want to use that data to push and drive those manual calls. So then you're really targeting your coaching instead of just going out and kind of hunting and pecking and saying, all right, I'm going to grab a 2-minute call, a 10-minute call, and kind of hope I uncover something. So again, it's all about using this to be more efficient, not replace your traditional QM process. So 100% of your calls scored. Again, there are more metrics you can do here as well around call duration to make sure that you're dropping off those 30-second calls that have no value anyway. Just making sure you're doing 100% of your calls and then using that manual call review to dig in deeper and provide that coaching. And again, you're not looking at any biases when you're using this product. You're not going to look at rush through a list of calls and get just the ones that are shorter from agents that are going to be performing well to make your stats look good. So key here is 100% of the calls and open it up to the whole organization as much as possible.
Nick, the nice thing about this is when we use it, it really helps you evaluate your evaluators, right? I mean, you can kind of bounce this up against your QM team and say, hey, listen, or your managers that may be scoring calls. But if I have a manager using this graph as an example, Harry Pleeger, if I know that Harry's scoring at 93, but when I use the automation tools to score the same calls and those calls are coming in at maybe a 40%, I know that I have a coaching opportunity to make sure that my QM team is really scoring in alignment with what our goals and our strategies are.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, it's going to identify where there are gaps in the quality process. Are we applying the quality standard the same across all agents? And that this will help identify that. And then also when you start to apply coaching and you start to apply e-learning in your quality process, are you seeing that impact? I mean, using this tool, you can see almost immediately if that has had an impact on how that agent is performing.
Yeah, absolutely.
So agent management coaching still a major component. Again, when folks tend to look at automation, they think they're done because they've done the automation. I'm scoring 100% of my calls. You still need to get tactical with your agents and communicate, in real words with real context, exactly where they need to get better. So I'm going to show you a couple examples of that on the next slide. So again, we just don't want to tell the agent, all right, your sentiment score went up 0.2% this month. Great job. That's not going to tell them anything tactically about what they want to do or where they stack rank on certain, keyword parameters. We want to get very targeted on where we give that feedback. So, feedback on the waveform itself, so they can actually see, hey, here's where we detected a problem. Here's our coaching tip on where you can get better on that problem. And then giving the waveform and the calls and all the scoring information to the agent, letting them listen to the call, see the feedback pop up, prescribe coaching along with that, and training and e-learning. So again, this isn't going to replace your quality management process. This is going to make it better, and be able to be more targeted in how you send this out. So I'd like to look at this as more of a workflow tool. Yeah, so again, working remote, this is tough. As we mentioned before, we can't walk down the hallway and see how people are doing, see how they're adapting. So this is a great way to bring all this together to score 100% of those calls, and still provide that remote management and coaching through there. So at the bottom, you see a quote from a customer that's using the product very effectively, Office Gurus. There's going to be a full case study that comes out and how they've utilized the tool, because they've done a great job with this. But what they're saying is pretty much what we hear from all of our clients is, as long as you're using this in a matching this up with your business processes, you're going to see a huge impact in the contact center. I don't know, Jason, if you have anything you want to add to that.
I was just thinking, the last 3-4 months have really kind of put a microscope on everything. And, a standard QM agent or manager, it's a one-to-one relationship, right? If I want to listen to an hour's worth of calls, I have to spend an hour of my time doing that. And that obviously takes a lot of time. So to the extent that even now, especially now that you can automate as much of that as you can and get some very quick, very fast overarching data about your agents, it allows you to deliver that feedback and keep that feedback much more current, much more active, right? So I'm not waiting a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks to say, hey, by the way, Nick, on June 2nd, you talked to Mr. Smith and you said this, this, and this. That's not super helpful, right? When I can say the following morning, hey, Nick, yesterday you didn't do the recording disclosure on 40% of your phone calls. We got to get better at that. That's game changing, and that's critical when your agent's not sitting 5 feet away from you.
Exactly. Excellent.
So I appreciate it, Nick. So that was all great stuff. I'm going to talk just about a little bit about business insights here. Lindsay, if you can hop to the next slide. Just recapping a lot of what Nick's already talked about here, but really we're understanding call drivers like never before. I started this webinar off with treating your call recordings and the content of your customer engagements as you would any other KPI, right? So you're talking about having analytics to understand the driver for almost every single inbound call, right? You're going to know why everybody's calling. Right now, you use term codes for that, and that's great. Your IVR has codes, your agents have codes, but there's a finite number that you can give an agent term codes to before there's a little bit of term code fatigue and the reliability gets lost. So using the speech analytics, so you can understand key insights and key needs, and with that you can increase your self-service capacity. So for example, you're hearing that a lot of customers are calling in and they're saying, I have a question about my bill. More often than not, that's going to translate to some other sort of call outcome, like a payment arrangement or a payment taken or a deferral, something that's not going to capture that the customer really just called in because they had a question about their bill. So you can modify that IVR to say, hey, if you have questions about your bill, press 1 and give them that information proactively. So again, it's something that's not usually caught with a term code. And again, also use those same drivers, that same insight for your marketing, for your operational strategies, for your content you're delivering. We talked earlier about champion challengers. If I know that 40% of my customers are calling in because they're unhappy about the amount of their bill, maybe I want a proactive outreach to give them some sort of a new program they can sign up for. Likewise, you can inform your staff and your training strategies to meet your demand. So again, if you're the example I just used a second ago, if you're hearing that 20% of your calls are going without that disclosure that calls are being recorded and monitored, that's an easy training, that's an easy coaching, that's simple communication to your entire team to reaffirm that. And Nick mentioned earlier, it may be something where you go back and modify your scripting so that you know it's being captured in your script, in your call flows on every single phone call. Lindsay, you go ahead for me. Again, unprecedented business insight. You have call and multi-channel data. It's accessible. It's 100% accessible. You can use that information we just spoke about it. We identify new business opportunities, understand how your customers' needs are changing, and that's more important right now than anything, right? We're seeing across our platform that more people are reaching out proactively, and more people are responding to outreach. So as those connect rates go up, we want to make sure that we're capturing how the customer's sentiment, how their response, how their resolutions are changing. And again, not all that is captured in a result code. And then lastly, you're understanding your quality and performance trends for your entire operation, measuring the effect of your training and coaching strategies. So to Nick's slide about sentiment, if I see our agent sentiment as an organization sliding week over week, I need a morale boost, right? I can't just have an ice cream social in the conference room right now, potentially. I got to have other ways that I can figure out to coach and boost my team's morale and get them back on the track. And again, with the automated scorecards, that's something you can do very, very quickly and track the results of your changes in your coaching very, very quickly. Lindsay, I think that was the last slide. Yeah. Okay. Before I go through this, let me check one more time. We had one question come through, Nick. I'm going to let you have it. The question was, this is the $1 million question, I guess. How long does it take to deploy if I'm an existing LiveVox customer? So how long, I guess the question is, how long would it take to onboard speech analytics to their existing processes?
Well, yeah, again, I mean, through our integration, it's quite easy. I mean, a few days will get you up and running with the phone calls, transcribing them. I mean, we do ask for time to partner with your team to make sure that it's being used as effectively as it can. But unlike other solutions out in the marketplace, the time to get the integration up and running, being in a cloud-based tool and the integration with LiveVox is very short.
Excellent. Yeah, that's I think that's a really important definer, because a lot of times, especially with a premise-based solution, this could be a months and months deployment. And yeah, I want to just touch back on the point you made about tuning. A lot of that heavy lifting, or most of that heavy lifting, has already been done. So that's been a kind of a historical challenge when people try to onboard speech analytics. So awesome. Hey, Nick, thanks for your time today. I appreciate it. For those of you, again, just a quick recap here. Lindsay will be sending out a recorded copy of this, as well as the document. In this, there will be some available assets, successful tips for switching to home agents, work from home metrics, the UQM overview that we did a couple weeks ago, LiveVox call and screen recording, and again, another recap of our WFO solutions. Again, thank you everybody for your time today. Keep an eye out as we kind of shift our cadence a little bit to potentially monthly or bi-weekly webinars. We'll keep an eye on that from Lindsay and the team. I appreciate everybody joining today. Lindsay, I'll turn it back to you.
Awesome. Thank you, Jason, and thank you, Nick. Mirroring what Jason said, thank you all again for joining. Thank you for joining our work from home webinar series the last couple of weeks. We do have an exciting announcement. U12 just went GA last week, so please be on the lookout for information about that, and be sure to reach out to your account managers. So with that, thank you all again for joining, and I hope you have a great rest of your day. Bye.